Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube and Patreon. Simply look for Drew Duncan Radio. And don't forget, I am wherever you listen to podcasts. Simply tell your device to play Drew Duncan wherever you listen to podcasts. Deezer, CastBox, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Wherever you're listening to podcasts, I am there. You know, I got to tell you, Tua coming out to the NFL, first of all, look, I think that we can all agree that watching Tua get hurt, whether you're a Crimson fan or not, that had to have been on some level devastating. You know, one of the things about seeing some kid with so much potential and potentially lose his entire career, everything that he's worked his young adult life for, suddenly potentially go up in ashes. I think we can all on some level empathize with that. And one of my big concerns would be with this move to get drafted is what happens if he doesn't. You know, don't forget that Jason White was a Heisman Trophy winner who didn't even get drafted in the NFL. And I think a big part of that had to do with the fact that he had two bad knees. And I think teams were just not willing to take a risk and say, yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Remember, you know, these scouts, these trainers, especially with this new next-gen technology that's out there, they do their research. They ask, they find out, they have sources that are willing to stay quiet. They are going to find out everything about this injury that they possibly can. Remember, when it very first happened, it was said that it was very similar to the injury that all but ended the career of Bo Jackson. And to this very day, many of us wonder who Bo Jackson really could have been if that injury had not happened. And I think that we're going to maybe one day look back and see the exact same thing with young Tua. Now, here's the deal. He says already in an interview that he did on ESPN that he's already been out, that he's already been throwing the football, that he's already been, you know, doing workouts and practices and things like that, and that he's, you know, been, you know, slowly reintegrating himself back in everything. I admire the kid's moxie. I really do. I wonder, though, if maybe one more year would have been of a huge benefit to Tua. So that way people can see him in live games. So that way people can say, okay, he's fine. So that way they can see him play against competition, especially in the SEC, right, with how physical things are. So that way they could see him and know that he's fine. Now, I understand that there's a vast antithesis to this, right? The antithesis obviously being, well, you know, if he did that and then he did get hurt, then he would really blow his ride to the NFL. But here's the thing, though. If he goes to the NFL and he gets hurt, guys, you know those guaranteed contracts and things like that. Don't tell me that there's not clauses in them. So one way or another, it would still be damaging, and maybe this way Tua can, you know, get more of an education. I mean, I'm just thinking about the future of this kid. I'm not one to tell anybody how to live their life, how to manage their career. That's not what I do. It's just, you know, thoughts that kind of run through my head as I see this. Speaking as somebody who's the oldest of 7 kids, speaking as somebody who's got 2 of their own, speaking as somebody who's in a household with a small 7-year-old child, speaking as somebody who's got 2 nephews and a niece, what would I advise them? What would I talk to them about? Your future. And maybe we need to start thinking about other aspects of that future. Now, I know that Tua's gone to his family, his friends, his coach. You know, Nick Saban said that he was like a son. Tua called their relationship an interesting dynamic. You know, I don't know. I don't know what those conversations have been like. I'm not going to sit around and speculate and guess and do all those kinds of things because I'm not that guy. I'm all about what I know directly from the horse's mouth, right? And that's what Tua said. That's what Nick Saban has said. So that's where we're at. And I know that a lot of people, speaking of Nick Saban, are very upset with him because he was in that football game. They were up 35-7. Saban's, idea was we need to run some 2-minute offense. We need to keep these guys ready and prepared for game situations down the line. He's obviously thinking staying championship ready, right? And remember, it was still the first half. I mean, how many times do you see first-teamers come out when the first half is over? I mean, don't forget that there was a time and day when the Nebraska Cornhuskers were running roughshod all over their opponents, and we would still see their players into the third quarter, at least for a little bit, and then they would go ahead and take everybody out. I mean, this is kind of a common practice. And I'm not mad at Nick Saban for still having Tua in at that point. I know that people look at that and they go, man, the game's decided, bro. It's 35-7. Yeah, that's what practice is for, is running those 2-minute drills. But let's be honest. Where you get the best experience is actually live in-game in itself. And in that situation, that's what Nick Saban was trying to accomplish. And nobody had the wherewithal or the foresight to be able to look and see, oh, if I do this, Tua's going to get hurt. So I think that if there's anybody out there that's blaming Nick Saban, you should probably go ahead and put that to bed right now. Because I don't see where Nick Saban was being malicious. And you could see the emotion from Nick Saban, I think, more than maybe anybody else except for maybe Tua himself when we saw that. Look, the imagery of him getting carted off and seeing a potential number 1 draft pick in the NFL maybe lose everything, that's difficult to deal with. And that goes with all that empathy and sympathizing and all those things that I was talking about at the beginning of this, right? I think that we all need to just kind of lay off of that, pump the brakes on that a little bit, because there's nobody in the world that saw that happening. My concern, like I said, is whether or not Tua's actually going to get drafted. This, more than anything, could be the damaging part of him going to the draft. Guys, it is a huge risk to take somebody with that kind of injury. Remember, Colt McCoy's dad, right? National championship game. McCoy goes down. The word is that he wanted to go back in, and his dad flat out said, no, he's not going to blow his ride. He's not playing the rest of this football game. And there's nothing that they can do about it. If dad or mom or guardian says, nah, bro, you're not going back in, that's all there is to it. It doesn't matter what a trainer says. It doesn't matter what a team doctor says. It doesn't even matter what an outside physician says. In that moment, everybody loses control. I understand Tua's thinking and his ultimate decision-making in going to the NFL. I get it. I need to do this now while my stock is still probably up, and I shouldn't go back to college and risk further injury and then for sure not getting a chance to go to the NFL. But I really believe that if he would have taken a different approach and gone back and even played maybe 6 or 7 games and just showed everybody, hey, I'm okay, I think everything would have been fine. It was a freak accident, that's for damn sure. And I definitely feel sorry for the kid, but best of luck to him. I hope everything works out for him, but I'm telling you, the NFL is a fickle beast, and they have one objective in that league, and that is win. That's it. And if they don't feel like you can produce those, trust me when I tell you, you will not be drafted. If they think that you're too big of a risk with those injuries as opposed to reward, believe me when I tell you, you will not be in that league. Guys, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan Radio. I'm on Patreon, Drew Duncan Radio as well. And do not forget that I am wherever you listen to podcasts. As a matter of fact, I've got the links to the podcasts in the description, or at least a couple of them. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.